Hi, I'm Raylene, and my family cut up the only dress I'd ever truly loved while I was asleep. They left a note that said, "This isn't your day." It was my sister's graduation. I was supposed to stand beside her, not disappear. But maybe that's what they always wanted. They drugged my tea, they smiled at breakfast, and when I opened my closet, the truth stared back at me in shredded silk. Was it about the dress? Or was it about making sure I never had a moment that wasn't theirs? How do you confront the people who taught you to be silent and then punished you for speaking? It was early spring in Winston-Salem. The dogwoods had started blooming, and there was that soft, strange light that always showed up just before pollen season hit full swing. My suitcase sat half-packed in the corner of the small guest room I'd been sleeping in for the last 6 months, ever since I moved back into my parents' house while trying to rebuild my freelance career after a rough layoff. I wasn't proud to be 31 and living in my childhood home again, but I told myself it was temporary. Just long enough to save up, get stable, and maybe, just maybe, breathe without feeling like every step I took was under someone's microscope. The week ahead was all about my sister Callista's graduation from her master's program. My parents were buzzing about it like it was the second coming of the Kennedy inauguration. Brunches, photo shoots, family moments. She was the shining daughter, always had been. The one with the polished resume, the spotlight smile, and the way of drawing people into her orbit without even trying. And me? I was the quiet one, the helper, the one who never caused trouble, just slipped out of frame when the picture was taken. Still, I wanted to look nice for the ceremony, not to compete. God knows, I wasn't trying to outshine anyone, but because I wanted to feel like I belonged in that photo this time. Like I mattered, too. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I treated myself. 2 weeks earlier, I used part of a bonus from a rush design project and ordered a navy blue silk wrap dress. Not too flashy, but clean, elegant, structured. Something that hugged in the right places and draped in the rest. I had it delivered to my office box instead of the house. I didn't want to explain the cost, or the reason. I kept the dress at work, tucked behind a row of paper sample binders in my locker. Every couple of days, when everyone had gone home, I'd slip into it quietly in the office bathroom and just look. Not in a vain way, not even a hopeful way. Just to remind myself that I could still feel like a woman who had a place to be seen. One night, about a week before the ceremony, I recorded a short video in that dress. I didn't plan to share it. I just needed to say something out loud. I set my phone against a stack of mock-up boards, hit record, and whispered, "This might be the first thing I've worn that feels like me." I didn't cry. I didn't pose. I just stared into the lens like I was finally trying to see myself, not just document someone I was pretending to be. The next evening, I brought the dress home, still in its original garment bag, tags attached, and slipped it into the back of the closet in the guest room. My mother, Vera, was folding towels when I walked through the front door. She gave me a polite nod. "Long day?" "Not too bad," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't mention the dress. Didn't want the questions. Callista was already home, seated at the kitchen island, sipping green tea like she lived in a catalog. She smiled at me, tight, calculated. "Big plans for the ceremony?" she asked, casually swirling her mug. "Just showing up," I replied, trying to sound light. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. A moment later, her phone buzzed, and she turned away, chuckling softly at something on the screen. Later that night, I noticed something strange. Vera had come into my room to drop off a fresh pillowcase, she said, but lingered longer than necessary. Her eyes glanced too pointedly at the corner where my purse sat. I told myself not to read into it, but the next morning, when I reached into that purse to grab the dry cleaning receipt for my dress, gone. The receipt was gone. I stood there for a full minute, patting down every compartment, checking every side pocket. I even dumped the contents onto the bed, my breath going tight in my chest. Wallet? There. Keys? Check. But no receipt. My gut coiled tight. Maybe I'd dropped it at work. Maybe I'd tossed it with an old snack wrapper. That had to be it. You're being paranoid again, I told myself under my breath. Still, I felt an old, cold tension crawling up the back of my neck. That kind of chill that doesn't come from wind or weather, but from the silent memory of when you've been accidentally excluded before. From birthdays where your name was never called. From family dinners where you were always the one asked to take the photo, not be in it. I got dressed quickly and opened the closet, not because I needed anything, but because I needed to know. The dress was still there, hanging just where I'd placed it, unmoved. But something about the way Callista had said, "See you tomorrow" last night, it didn't feel like a promise. It felt like a warning. The next morning started too quietly. The kind of hush that doesn't come from peace. It comes from performance. The sun filtered in through the thin blinds of the guest room, and I could already hear Vera clinking dishes in the kitchen, her movements unusually careful, like she didn't want to disturb anything, or anyone. When I walked into the kitchen, the air was scented with cinnamon and subtle calculation. Vera was arranging orange slices on a tray like she was prepping for a magazine shoot. Callista sat nearby, flipping through a glossy brochure for the brunch venue. Both looked up at me with matching, rehearsed smiles. "Morning," I said, reaching for the coffee pot. "Morning, sweetheart," Vera said too quickly. "I made extra toast." Callista chimed in, overly casual. "Can you believe tomorrow's already here? It feels like I just got my acceptance letter." The conversation felt scripted. They were doing that thing, talking at me, not to me. Every word too smooth, like it had been run through rehearsal. I sat down with my coffee, nodding, playing along, even though the back of my mind was already ticking. After a few polite bites of toast, I excused myself and headed back to my room. I reached into my purse, not even sure why. Habit, maybe. A part of me needed reassurance. The side zip pocket, where I always kept receipts I didn't want to crumple, was empty. I froze. That little piece of paper from the boutique downtown, the one with the barcode and item description. Silk wrap dress, midnight navy. It was gone. My fingers dug through every compartment, even checking my coat pocket, though I knew I hadn't put it there. I retraced everything in my mind. When had I last touched it? I'd looked at it 2 nights ago, after work, when Vera had asked me to bring her a glass of water while she folded towels. A cold line drew across my chest. No. I was being ridiculous. It's just a receipt. Who cares? Still, I couldn't shake it. It wasn't about the slip of paper. It was what it suggested. Hands going where they shouldn't, eyes looking through things not theirs. At lunch, Callista joined me on the patio. She was wearing her favorite linen jumpsuit, the one she claimed made her feel clean and expensive. "I like your earrings," she said. "Are those the ones Mom gave you? Or the ones you bought without telling her?" I looked up slowly. "The ones from Charleston." "Ah, right," she said, sipping her lemonade, eyes glinting. "We all have our place, right?" Something about her tone made the hairs on my arm rise. She wasn't complimenting me. She was marking territory. That afternoon, I went to the den to grab my car keys. I paused when I saw Callista's tablet open on the coffee table. The screen was dim, but not locked. A message thread was still up. Just enough to read one last exchange. Callista. "She actually bought it. Thinks it's for her." Vera. "Let her feel pretty for one night, then fix it." The screen went dark. I stood there for a long moment, my keys in hand, my mouth dry. It was real, not in my head, not a feeling, not paranoia. They knew. They planned it. They talked about me like I was excess. Back in my room, I sat down on the edge of the bed, the receipt still missing, the message burned into my brain. I thought about all the times they said I was sensitive, overreacting, too quick to assume. I whispered, "Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you." I opened my closet again, not to check if the dress was still there, but to remind myself why I wasn't crazy. It was hanging where I'd left it, safe, for now. That night, I heard Callista humming in her room. I walked past slowly. Her door was half open. She was folding something navy blue and slipping it into a bag. Her back was to me. For the first time in years, I didn't knock. I just watched. I barely slept that night. I tried. I even changed the pillowcase like Vera always insisted I do before important events. But every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing Callista folding something navy into her bag, humming like nothing was wrong. Maybe nothing was. Yet. Around 10, I heard a knock on my door. It was Vera, holding a ceramic mug with steam curling over the rim. "I made chamomile," she said softly, stepping inside without waiting for me to say yes. "Thought it might help you rest. You've been running around all day." I hesitated. "Thanks." She smiled, the kind of smile you use on someone who doesn't know the whole story. "You'll want to feel fresh tomorrow. It's a big day, for all of us." I took the mug and nodded. She lingered, glanced toward the closet, then back at me. "Get some good sleep, okay?" After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cup. I didn't want to be suspicious. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was her way of showing care. But the part of me that had been ignored, minimized, and silenced for decades told me to trust my gut. I set the mug on my nightstand. I didn't drink it right away. I turned off the light, crawled under the blanket, and told myself I'd just rest my eyes for a few minutes. The next thing I knew, morning light was slicing through the blinds like a blade. My body felt heavy and light at the same time, like my limbs had been detached and put back together wrong. I sat up too fast. My head spun. Something wasn't right. I swung my legs off the bed, rubbed my eyes, and stood. The closet door was closed. I had left it ajar the night before. I was sure of it. My heart picked up speed. I opened it slowly. The dress was there, sort of, but it wasn't the dress I had brought home. The hem had been hacked off unevenly, like someone took scissors to it in the dark. The neckline had jagged edges, one shoulder seam had been ripped, and a loose thread hung down like a pulled nerve. Draped over the hanger was a yellow sticky note in handwriting I knew better than my own. "This isn't your day. Wear something appropriate." My knees didn't buckle. They locked, as if refusing to let me fall in front of them again. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, looking at the carnage of silk and thread. My brain tried to convince me this wasn't real, that maybe it got caught on something. Maybe I'd done it myself without realizing, but I knew better. My hands reached out and touched the fabric like it was a wounded animal. All the hours I spent debating whether to buy it. The guilt I pushed aside just to feel like I had something of my own. The late nights at work, the overtime revisions, every bit of effort was stitched into that dress. And now? Now it was a message. Some scars aren't skin deep. They're sewn into silk. I finally sat down on the bed and stared at the torn dress. I replayed Vera's voice, soft, sweet, almost maternal. "Get some rest." I thought of Callista humming. I thought of the message thread on her tablet. I didn't cry. Not yet. When I walked into the kitchen, it was like entering a museum. Everything too neat, too curated. Vera was sipping coffee, flipping through the local events page like it was any other day. Lyle sat with his tablet, barely acknowledging me. No one flinched. No one asked why my eyes were glassy or why I looked like I'd been punched in the gut. Lyle glanced up, expression unreadable. "Old dresses are more modest anyway." Vera set her mug down gently. "Don't overreact. It's your sister's moment. Let her shine." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. There was no point in speaking when the people in front of you had already decided not to listen. So I turned, walked back down the hallway, past the bathroom where we used to line up before school, past the family portraits where my smile was always the smallest. In my room, I shut the door quietly, locked it. then walked to my dresser, opened the second drawer, and pulled out my work phone, the one I used for audio notes, ideas, client memos. I stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering over the red button. And then I pressed record. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long while after I hit stop on the recording. The audio file blinked on the screen, silent, weighty. I didn't even know if I'd ever play it for anyone else. Maybe it was just for me, proof that I wasn't imagining what they'd done. I closed the drawer, got dressed slowly, and headed into the kitchen again. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every step I took across that creaky hallway floorboard sounded like a declaration. Vera was already at the counter, humming while wiping down an already clean surface. Lyle was by the toaster, pressing the lever down with military precision. The two of them looked like a painting of domestic calm, until you looked close enough to see the cracks. I walked in without speaking, sat at the same chair I always did, the one closest to the window, furthest from the family photo wall. Vera glanced over her shoulder. "Coffee's fresh," she said, gesturing toward the pot. I poured a cup, careful to avoid eye contact. Lyle took a bite of toast, then said with a casual shrug, "Old dresses are more modest anyway, better for family photos. Timeless, you know." I didn't respond. I just stirred cream into my mug until it swirled into a soft beige. Vera cleared her throat, still not looking at me. "We're leaving around 10 tomorrow. Hair and makeup at the venue for Callista. I told them not to wait on you in case you're running behind." I took a slow sip, kept my voice level. "I won't be late." She turned toward me then, fully, and offered a smile I'd seen too many times. It looked like sympathy from a distance, but up close it was all condescension. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. It's her day. Don't ruin it by being emotional." My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I didn't speak, not yet. Vera moved toward the sink, rinsing an empty glass for no reason. "It's not always about you, Raylene. Let her shine. Don't be petty." There it was. That phrase again, "let her shine," as if I were a shadow that needed to be managed. I set the mug down carefully. Let her shine, or make sure I don't? The room shifted. It was slight, like a drop in temperature that nobody acknowledged. Vera froze, sponge in hand. Lyle let out a long exhale, the kind of sound people make when they're tired of hearing truth spoken aloud. He didn't look at me. Of course not. I stood, not in anger, but in decision. My voice didn't rise. "You're not protecting her. You're preserving a lie. And I'm not going to keep playing the invisible daughter so she can keep pretending to be the center of everything." I walked toward the hallway. Vera followed. "Raylene!" Her voice had dropped its fake sweetness. Now it was sharp, commanding. "If you do anything tomorrow, anything to take the attention off your sister, I will never forgive you." I stopped halfway to my room, turned around slowly. "What if I never forgive you first?" Her mouth opened slightly. Nothing came out. Lyle was standing at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, pretending not to listen. But he didn't move, didn't interrupt, not even when Vera's jaw clenched. I walked the rest of the way down the hall, grabbed my keys, and opened the front door. Outside, the wind carried the scent of cut grass and something sterile, like the air before a thunderstorm. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I walked to my car, got in, and sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Inside my coat pocket, the phone was still recording, and I didn't stop it. I drove without thinking, just far enough to not see the house in my rearview mirror anymore. The further I got, the easier it was to breathe. I pulled into an old park I used to visit during college, before life grew edges. The parking lot was mostly empty, a few early dog walkers, and someone sleeping in their car. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, fingers wrapped around the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to earth. The dress was ruined. My mother didn't deny it. My father practically approved of it. And Callista, she watched it all unfold like a spectator in a play she co-wrote. I thought back to something my college mentor once told me after I withdrew from a project team so my louder classmate could lead. Silence is a choice, not always the right one. At the time, I'd shrugged it off. I'd always told myself silence was grace, maturity. Now, I wasn't so sure. Out of sheer impulse, I opened Instagram. I hadn't checked Callista's page in weeks. Her latest post was a photo of the two of us as kids, except it wasn't. It was cropped, her arms outstretched, smiling like she always did, but my side of the frame had been edited out. The caption read, "Grateful for my biggest supporter. Even in silence, she's there." The comment section made my stomach turn. "Your sister's so lucky to have you." Family goals. "Love how close you two are." No one saw what was missing, and that was the point. I stared at the screen until it blurred, then called Imogene before I could change my mind. Her voice picked up on the second ring, steady, familiar. "Hey," I said, voice brittle but clear. "Do you have a minute?" "I always have a minute for you," she said. "Talk." I didn't start with the dress, or the note, or the silence at breakfast. I started with the photo, the one where I didn't exist. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. Imogene didn't rush to comfort. She let the silence settle, then broke it clean. "They're counting on you to fade out quietly," she said. "What if this time you don't?" "I don't even know what that looks like," I admitted. "Start by showing up." Her words hit like a lighthouse beam. I didn't reply right away. I just held on to the sound of her voice, let it anchor me back. When I got home, the house was silent again. Vera was in the living room, reading a magazine, pretending she hadn't heard the front door. Callista was nowhere in sight. As I passed the dining table, Vera slid an envelope across the surface without looking up. "It's a short toast. Just read it as written. Nothing dramatic." I picked it up, nodded, and kept walking. In my room, I opened the envelope and unfolded the page. It was exactly what I expected. Fluff. Callista is a beacon of light. Her accomplishments speak for themselves. A sister anyone would be proud to have. I wasn't angry. I was done being angry. I just folded the paper and set it aside. Then I opened the Notes app on my phone. This time, I didn't censor myself. I didn't write for applause or acceptance. I wrote for the girl who'd spent a lifetime being edited out of every family story. My speech wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. By evening, I'd rewritten every line of what I wanted to say. Not just to the room full of guests tomorrow, but to the version of myself who thought being invisible was safer than being seen. Later that night, I took both dresses out of the closet, the torn one and the one I plan to wear now. I laid them side by side on the bed. One wasn't ruined. It was unfinished, like me. I woke up before the alarm, before the birds even began their usual warbling outside the guest bedroom window. The kind of waking that doesn't come from rest, but from resolve. My body felt light, but every step felt anchored by something heavier than fatigue. I moved quietly, brushing past the creaks in the hallway floor, letting my breath settle before I turned on the light in the bathroom. The mirror showed a version of me I hadn't quite seen before. Eyes focused, jaw set, the kind of face you wear when you've decided not to shrink anymore. The dress I chose wasn't new. It was one I'd worn to a job interview years ago, one I didn't get. But last night, I took in the seams, added a new waistline, and stitched a single small line of navy embroidery along the hem. Subtle, but intentional. It no longer felt like failure. Downstairs was quiet. No clinking dishes, no humming. Vera and Lyle had likely left for the venue early to help Callista prep. Good. I didn't want an audience. I went into the guest living room to look for my charger. The house computer was still on, screen glowing softly in the corner. I moved to unplug my phone, but paused. On the monitor was a tab still open. Security software. Motion-triggered video logs. My fingers hesitated above the mouse. Then I clicked. Curiosity beat caution. I scrolled through thumbnails, mostly boring. One caught my eye. 2:13 a.m. Hallway camera, flagged motion. I clicked. The clip started in silence. The hallway, a soft shuffle. Then Vera appeared, barefoot, hair tied back. She opened my door. I couldn't breathe. She stepped inside, carrying something, scissors. She reached into my closet, carefully pulled out the dress. No hesitation. She laid it on the bed and began cutting. Sleeves first, then neckline. She paused only once, looking toward the doorway. Lyle stood there, not stopping her, just watching. And then, he nodded. The video ended. 38 seconds. That's all it took. I sat there for a long time, letting the glow of the monitor burn into my retinas. Then, I downloaded the clip to a flash drive and slipped it into my clutch. Not to use it, not yet, but to have it. Later, in my room, while double-checking that everything I needed was packed, I opened the nightstand drawer and found something else, an old envelope tucked beneath my spare charger. The return address was familiar, my old university. I opened it slowly. A scholarship letter, full ride. I remembered this. I remembered not going. I remembered Vera's voice when I told her, "Raylene, don't set yourself up for embarrassment. They say those things to be polite. You don't want to go and fail in front of people who matter." I remembered nodding. I remembered folding it quietly and putting it away. But this morning, holding that envelope again, I didn't feel shame. I felt anger. Anger that had matured into clarity. "No more," I said out loud. Not to the room, but to that version of me who folded letters and agreed to be less. By the time I arrived at the venue, brunch preparations were in full swing. Callista stood near a floral arch, giving orders to someone about table settings. Vera was with the coordinator. Lyle leaned against the back wall, arms crossed. Vera approached me as I walked in. "You look nice," she said with caution. Then, almost mechanically, she handed me a folded paper. "Your remarks. Just read them exactly." I didn't argue. I smiled, folded it, tucked it into my clutch. Never looked at it again. And then I walked into the reception room, first, ahead of them all. I claimed my place, not because it was offered, but because it had always been mine. The guests began to arrive, slowly at first. I mingled where needed, but mostly stayed near the sound system setup, watching the technician finalize the Bluetooth pairing. My flash drive was in my hand, my phone in the other. 38 seconds. That's how long it takes to change everything. I checked my phone one last time and pressed play, just to be sure. The clip was cued. In less than an hour, so was my moment. The vineyard was exactly what I imagined Callista would choose. Picture perfect, curated down to the dew on the hydrangeas. The sun sat smug in a clear sky, but the air had a weight to it. Something unspoken, waiting. I arrived earlier than expected, which I suspected was by design. Vera didn't say much when she saw me, just eyed my dress from head to hem with that brief twitch in her cheek she hadn't learned to control. Callista was already fluttering around in cream chiffon, directing servers, posing near flower arrangements as if the event were being live-streamed. She greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You made it," she said, her tone wrapped in tulle. "I said I would," I replied, meeting her gaze, unblinking. My dress. Yes, it was old, technically. But the beadwork I'd added, the adjusted cut at the waist, the way it moved when I walked, it didn't feel old. It felt finished. Not for them, for me. Vera approached and slid something into my hand without looking me in the eye. A folded envelope. "Just a few notes for your toast. Keep it simple." I didn't argue. I nodded, tucked it into my purse. I'd read enough of their scripts to know exactly how this one ended. Short, sweet, forgettable. Inside the reception space, voices were bouncing off the wine barrels and glass. The room buzzed with a careful type of joy, the performative kind. Former teachers, family friends, old church acquaintances. They hugged Callista like she was a celebrity and greeted me like I was an unexpected +1. "It's so nice Raylene could make it," an aunt whispered to another, as if I wasn't within earshot. I didn't flinch. Instead, I watched. I watched Callista pose for photos with Vera, one hand on her hip, the other holding a flute of something sparkling. I watched Lyle nod politely at people who said, "You must be so proud." I watched how no one asked me how I'd been, not even once. And then I waited. Just before my name was called, I walked past a small mirror in the hallway near the kitchen. I paused, looked at myself, not to adjust anything, just to see. The sleeves of the dress were cleanly cut. The embroidery caught the light like a quiet defiance. My hair was pinned back, not tight, not forced. My lips moved, barely. If they won't let me wear power, I'll stitch it into the seams. The microphone waited for me. I approached the front as they called my name. "Raylene, younger sister of our brilliant Callista, has a few words." Applause followed, but it wasn't for me. It was for the assumption that I'd stay in line. Callista gave me a quick nod. Caution? Approval? I couldn't tell anymore. I stepped up. My hands didn't shake. I pulled a folded paper from my purse, not the one Vera gave me. Mine. I looked at the crowd. I let the silence fill the space before I spoke. I know I wasn't meant to be the focus today, but there's something I need to say, and not just to celebrate someone else. I cleared my throat once before leaning slightly into the microphone, just enough to feel the vibration through my fingertips. The chatter in the vineyard's reception tent died slowly, like a distant faucet being turned off. Polite attention settled over the guests, most of them smiling out of habit, not recognition. "First, I want to thank everyone who came today," I began, my tone steady, even soft. "It means a lot to Callista, to our family." Vera nodded from her table, eyes glassy with pride. Callista beamed like she was in a magazine spread. I could feel Lyle's glance from the back, neutral and unreadable as ever. I took a breath. "And I want to thank my parents for the opportunity to speak, for trusting me to represent our family with a few words." Another pause. "They even gave me a script, something thoughtful, flattering, clean." Smiles all around. I folded the script slowly in front of me, tucked it beside the microphone. But I won't be reading that. The shift in the room was immediate, eyes lifted from plates, postures straightened. Somewhere near the middle table, silverware clinked against a glass, then fell silent. I was asked to talk about my sister, but to do that honestly, I need to tell you something else first. Callista's smile faltered. Vera's shoulders tensed. "This morning, I wore a dress I modified myself. Some of you might not notice. It used to be different. The original one, the one I bought with my own money, the one I was excited to wear, it's gone." A few murmurs, some uncomfortable shifts in chairs. I found it ripped apart, seams slashed, note left behind. "This isn't your day. Wear something appropriate." Gasps started in the back. Someone whispered, "What?" loud enough for others to hear. I've spent a lifetime being told not to take up space, to dim my light so someone else could shine brighter. I've been asked to be quiet, to be grateful, to be invisible, because that's what good daughters do. I glanced toward Vera. Her face was tight now, lips pursed, hands folded too precisely in her lap. Callista looked down, then back up, her mask cracking. "This isn't a speech about a perfect sister," I continued. "It's about what we silence in women who refuse to be ornamental, who refuse to be manageable." I picked up my phone from the podium. A soft click connected it to the Bluetooth speaker. The technician gave a subtle nod. "Before you decide whether to believe me, I want to let someone else speak." I pressed play. The clip was quiet. No sound but the rustle of fabric and the occasional distant creak. But the footage said everything. Vera entering my room, scissors in hand, Lyle watching from the hallway, the dress laid out, the first slice, then another. By the time it ended, no one was chewing. The air had gone still. Callista's mouth hung open. Vera tried to form words, but none came. Lyle stared straight ahead. I looked back to the audience. They taught me to be quiet. Today, I taught them what that silence cost me. I stepped back from the mic. One clap, hesitant, from the far left. Then another, and another. The sound swelled. Not loud, not wild, just full. Like a dam breaking in slow motion. I caught one older guest whispering to the person beside her, "That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." As I walked off the stage, Vera sat frozen. Callista's eyes brimmed, not with sadness, but rage. Fury disguised as fragility. The mic was still on, and no one rushed to turn it off. I sat back down at my table, not entirely sure if the applause had even happened or if I'd conjured it in my head out of need. My fingers were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline, or maybe from the silence that followed. Vera was still frozen at the front, one hand clenched into the back of Callista's chair. Callista hadn't moved either. She stared at me like I had rewritten her entire script, and she couldn't find the next line. The brunch program moved on, awkwardly. Someone clinked a glass and tried to read out a trivia game about Callista's college years, but the room didn't return to its previous rhythm. The noise was back, but it wasn't the same. It was stilted. People talked to fill space now, not because they had something to say. Imogene appeared at my side without saying a word and gestured with a slight tilt of her head. I followed her out the side door, down a stone path into the vineyard's garden, where the noise of the reception dulled into background static. "You were brilliant," she said once we were alone, leaning against a tree. "But now comes the quiet part, the part where they pretend nothing happened." I nodded. "And we pretend we're okay with it." Her eyes met mine. "But you're not pretending anymore." I didn't know what to call what I was feeling. It wasn't relief, it wasn't pride. It was something sharper and colder, like standing in the space after a tornado, when the house is still upright, but the walls are cracked, and no one can unsee them now. "I don't know if I won anything," I said. "I just know I survived something I didn't name until today." We walked a little longer. I barely heard the birds or the breeze, only the echo of my own voice from a microphone still left on. Back inside, I reached into my purse for lip balm and found something wedged beneath the RSVP card. A sliver of cream paper. I pulled it out. It was the original invitation. Handwritten in Vera's cursive, under the line "Guest Name" was Psu 1, Guest. Optional, not critical. Not critical. It felt like someone had quietly laid a tombstone on top of a wound that hadn't even closed yet. I folded it back up, tucked it into my purse. No reaction, just understanding. I wasn't meant to be there. I was included for appearances, not intention. Just another piece of the illusion. Back at the reception, a distant cousin had taken the mic. "You know what makes family strong?" he began, clearly attempting to reset the tone. "It's our ability to bounce back, to forgive, to laugh together. And I think today proves just how special this family really is." Imogene stood up, didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. "Let her speak," she said firmly. The room quieted. All eyes turned to me. I looked up, slowly shook my head. "I already have." I gathered my purse, stood, and walked to the back. No grand gesture, no dramatic exit, just distance, intentional, earned. The breeze outside was stronger now, carrying away the tension I no longer needed to carry. As I crossed the gravel lot toward my car, someone called my name. I turned to find one of Callista's old friends, Elena, I think, walking briskly to catch up. She stopped a few feet away, slightly out of breath. "Hey," she said, "I know we don't really know each other, but I just wanted to say, whatever that was, it was honest." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. "She may have the stage," Elena added quietly, "but you took the light." And then she walked back inside, leaving me with words I hadn't realized I needed. I didn't look back at the vineyard. I didn't need to, because this time, I wasn't the one who should be ashamed. The video found its way online before I even made it home. I didn't post it, But someone did. A cousin, maybe? Or a guest who recorded part of the speech on their phone. Within hours, I started receiving messages from names I didn't recognize. "Thank you for saying what so many of us never dared to." I cried. Because I've lived that too. My mother still pretends I don't exist at holidays. The clip wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. 38 seconds of proof, 3 sentences of truth. And years of silence cracked open like a window in a room that had been sealed too long. The local paper ran a feature the next morning. "Sister's speech exposes family secrets. Crowd applauds." Not everyone liked the framing, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't writing the headline, and neither were they. Back at the house, Vera and Lyle were quiet. Not the cold, passive-aggressive quiet I'd grown up with. This was different. There were no phone calls, no texts, no knock on my door pretending to offer a talk. They didn't deny it. They didn't defend themselves. They just vanished. I remembered what my therapist once said after I'd spent an entire session justifying their behavior. When they stop trying to control the narrative, it's because they've lost it. The silence used to feel like punishment. Now it felt like release. 2 weeks later, I was at a local community event. Nothing big, just a fundraiser for a girls' mentorship program. I stood near the refreshments, chatting with a woman from the city council, when I noticed Vera across the room. She was wearing the necklace I'd given her for Mother's Day 4 years ago. The one she never thanked me for. The one she left in the bathroom drawer for months, like it didn't matter. And now, she was wearing it like it had always belonged. I excused myself from the conversation, walked across the room, and stopped beside her. She turned just enough to register my presence. That careful smile returned, trying to regain old footing. "Nice event," she said. I looked at the necklace. "It looks better now that it's not hiding who you are." Her smile faltered, but she didn't reply. I walked away before she could. Later that day, while grabbing coffee at a nearby cafe, a woman touched my shoulder gently. I turned, surprised. "Raylene?" she asked. "Yes?" "I'm Elaine Martin. I taught Callista in high school, speech and drama." I nodded, trying to place her face. "I used to wonder how you stayed so quiet around such a loud family." Her voice softened. Now I know that silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. I didn't know what to say, so I simply smiled. "I watched the video," she added. "You didn't just speak, you reclaimed space." We hugged. No dramatics, no tears, just recognition. Not long after, I got word from a mutual family acquaintance. Callista's internship, one she'd bragged about endlessly, had been pulled. Apparently, the company had reputation concerns. Some sponsors had backed out. Social media had reached the boardroom. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just let the words settle. The truth, I told the friend, has a way of collecting what it's owed. There were no fireworks, no confrontation, just consequence. I walked through the aftermath with no need to stomp. I didn't dance on the ruins. I just walked past them, wearing everything they said I didn't deserve. Weeks passed like the slow dripping of rain off a gutter. Constant, quiet, unavoidable. I didn't hear from Vera, or Lyle, or Callista. At first, it felt like silence with teeth, like the kind they'd used my whole life to punish without saying a word. But something shifted. Somewhere between my second cup of morning coffee and the third night I slept through without waking up in a sweat, I realized it wasn't punishment anymore. It was peace. Detachment, I learned, isn't numbness. It's clarity. It's knowing that you can acknowledge pain without making a home in it. One Saturday afternoon, I found myself digging through an old storage bin I'd been meaning to clean out since I moved back. Inside was a stack of journals, some receipts, and a folder labeled "Applications Do Not Open Unless Accepted." Buried between draft resumes and financial aid paperwork was a letter I'd written to my parents years ago. It was dated just before college started. I'd never sent it. It read, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry if I've ever embarrassed you. I know I'm not the daughter you expected, but I promise I'm trying trying to be smaller, quieter, easier to love. I stopped reading. My own handwriting felt foreign, like someone else had written it. A younger version of me, still bargaining, still pleading for inclusion. I folded it back up, not out of shame, but because I didn't need to finish it. I don't owe anyone that apology anymore, I said aloud, setting the letter into the shred pile without hesitation. Later that week, I opened my inbox to find an unexpected email. Subject: Thank you. The sender was a name I only half remembered. Marissa, one of the girls I'd mentored through the local school's volunteer writing program. She wrote, "I just wanted to say you made me believe I had a voice. You didn't just tell me I mattered. You listened. You didn't flinch when I stuttered or froze. And when I saw the clip from the brunch, I realized, you believe it for yourself now, too." I read that line 3 times. Sometimes we don't know who's been watching us survive. That weekend, I drove up to Asheville and joined a women's writing retreat. No one knew who I was. No one asked about my sister or what I'd done. We sat in circles. We wrote. We shared when we felt ready. I didn't share the story of the dress. I didn't mention the video. But I wrote. In one journal entry, I scribbled, "Letting go is not the same as forgetting. It's remembering who I was before I was edited." On the last night, we lit small candles and placed them on a wooden board carved with the word reclaim. I watched mine flicker and didn't wish for anything. I'd already received it. The drive home was silent, and for once, that wasn't a bad thing. Back in Winston-Salem, I checked my phone out of habit. Still nothing from Vera. Part of me wondered if she'd ever reach out. Even a text, a question, anything. But silence remained. No explanation, no regret, not even denial. I stared out the window of my bedroom, watching 2 birds pick at a sunflower head that had gone to seed. "I don't need an apology to heal," I whispered. "I just need to stop waiting for it." And I meant it. I didn't close the door out of anger. I left it unlocked. But I walked away from it for good. 6 months later, the doors opened. Not to applause, not to fanfare, but to something quieter and stronger. Resolve. The morning sun reflected off the tall glass windows of the new center, spilling light onto the sidewalk in front of me like a path that had waited my whole life to appear. I stood outside the front entrance, surrounded by volunteers, city council members, reporters, and a handful of young women clutching notebooks and nervous smiles. It was the grand opening of the Reclaim Center, built for young women who had been silenced by the people closest to them and needed space to find their voice again. I didn't start it alone. My former employer had offered seed funding. A nonprofit matched our efforts, and a dozen women I'd once thought of as background players became my board of advisors. We didn't build this for headlines, but the press showed up anyway. They asked for a quote. I gave them one. "We didn't create this space for attention. We created it so no girl ever has to earn her right to be heard." Behind me, the main window of the building bore a mural, stitched in outlines of repurposed dresses, some with missing sleeves, others unevenly hemmed, were silhouettes of women standing tall. Above them, painted in bold script, they tried to silence me, so I built louder walls. It wasn't just art, it was truth. The window was more than decoration. It was survival made visible. I walked inside, greeting each person with eye contact and steady hands. It wasn't about being perfect anymore. It was about being present. Halfway through the morning, while showing a guest around the resource room, I saw them. Vera and Lyle. They stood just inside the doorway. No announcement, no RSVP. Just 2 people aged by time, wearing discomfort like ill-fitted suits. Vera's lips curved into a half smile. "This is impressive." Lyle nodded once, as if trying not to look small under the high ceilings. I straightened my spine. "We take written feedback now," I said gently, gesturing to the front desk. "You can leave a note there." She blinked, unsure what to do with civility that wasn't rooted in fear. Lyle didn't speak. I didn't offer hugs, or questions, or closure. I turned and continued walking with the guest beside me, explaining our mentorship pairings and job skill workshops. Behind me, I heard the door open, then close. They never came back. And I never needed them to. Some people aren't meant to be forgiven. Some are just meant to be forgotten with dignity. Later that afternoon, we held a short ceremony to officially open the space. Just a few rows of chairs on the back patio, some folding tables with lemonade and fruit, and a microphone that didn't waver. I stepped up, not needing a script. They cut my dress, I said. But what they didn't know was that it wasn't what I wore that made me powerful. It was surviving them. One girl, maybe 14, locked eyes with me and mouthed the word, "Thank you." That was the only applause I needed. When the event wrapped up, I stood alone for a moment in front of the glass, watching my reflection framed in the silhouettes. I used to think closure meant they'd say sorry, but now I know it means I get to speak without needing their permission.